Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, Swati Arora, I'm representing Slack at this event. Really excited to be partnering with ET on this amazing CXO event. I think, as, being an observer outside the community, still trying to look at everybody who's been participating, something that has stood out since yesterday and today is that the amount of energy and enthusiasm that all of you have had, not just in this classroom, in the mixology session, in the retro Bollywood session, and I saw some pictures from this morning about catching fishes on the beaches. I think the energy has been so amazing. It is great to see some great discussions flowing through and people having fun. So the context is great, and I hope all of you have been having a great time. So a big round of applause for all of you for making this success, because I think it wouldn't have been without the participation. All right. So just starting with the topic that we are going to discuss today. Today is a moment when a lot of the organizations are kind of almost at a disruption or a transformation, if I can say that. Due to a lot of factors, pandemic, of course, being the biggest factor, and then it leading to so many consumer behavior changes, technology adoption changes, and the economies of the world going through a whirlwind. And that leading to a huge demand-supply gap in the talent that we have, and leading to a talent war that pretty much all the CXOs in the room have at top of their priority. But as they say, never waste a good crisis. And probably this is one of the biggest crises we've had. All of you CXOs today are prioritizing and trying to build workplaces which are truly flexible, equitable, inclusive, everything which is future ready. It is my privilege today to host a discussion with each of these panelists who've been doing some amazing work in their organizations and really pushing the envelope on this topic. So let's get started. Just to start with building the background of what it was when it first hit. I think, Pallab, just to start with you, I want to start off by asking, when the change happened. I think in the recent times, everything that has happened, one of the biggest change has been how your role has changed as a leader, right? There's been so many new dimensions that have been added. So what has been the biggest change for you as a leader during this entire transition?
Yeah, thank you, Swati, for that. Yeah, I think the work per se has not changed, right? So the output still remains that as a bank, we take money from someone, we lend money to someone else, and we help with your payments. That's the fundamental of a bank. How we did it, that changed, right? How we did it. We moved to an online platform. We opened accounts through a selfie, through a tab, or whatever have you. So that's what changed, right? From an HR angle, we onboarded people. We did our appraisals. We did everything through a virtual mode. So that's the fundamental change. But what I feel actually changed is that the value people started associating with life. Suddenly, life became much more important as an identity than work itself, right? So I think how we kind of embraced life more than work and integrated life into work was the major change. So, we were very worried. We were scared that, we might not meet our friends. We might not meet our colleagues ever in our lives, And so I'll tell you my personal experience. One night, we actually, my daughter studies overseas, and she couldn't come back. And one night, we actually left the main door open, just thinking that she'll walk in. So we did crazy things. So I think that's what changed. At a leadership level, I think what also changed was the amount or the type of collaboration that we were doing. Collaboration was no longer restricted to your team, your organization. I'll give you one small example. We are headquartered in Chennai, and so Chennai, we had a lot of connects, which probably is not the headquarters of many organizations. And I had other CHROs who were part of Bangalore, Delhi, etc. And they were in different sectors. So I collaborated with a technology firm, one of the largest technology firms, and to get hospital beds for my employees in Bangalore while I was helping him to get hospital beds in Chennai. That's how life changed. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, that's I think, how things.
Yeah. Pallab, thank you for opening with a very important theme, right? The human in the human resources. I think that's what came to focus as part of the entire transition that we went through. And you also touched upon about how you had to wear multiple hats. And Nishant, I'm going to kind of segue to you there in terms of leading a large organization. And what were the kind of hats you were wearing when you were really going through this transition?
Yeah, so I'll just kind of add to what Pallab said. Suddenly, we all, I don't think this restricts ourselves to folks who run people function or HR function, but I think we all in the organization at any level of leadership, we had to be care providers, empathizers, counselors, apart from the functional deliverables that you anyway do, that cannot take a back seat. And I think it was, crisis response became a big, big thing. First, being a first responder or leading a team of first responders, because the health infrastructure or that sort of infrastructure that's required in the country was just not up for it. And again, I'm not criticizing because nobody ever thought that we would be in such a scenario. But I think so all of these roles kind of came in together. And I, for one, almost felt like an exasperated orchestra, the conductor of the orchestra, really exasperated. And I have to say that the first few weeks, for me personally, were very overwhelming. And I know later on, it started to provide opportunities in areas that we never thought, wow, I could reimagine my role, and I'm sure this might have been an experience of a lot of people. I can reimagine this with this amazing opportunity that an unfortunate incident or an unfortunate pandemic has given us. So I really felt that was, I think we were on a trajectory to perform all of these roles at different points in time. It just became a perfect storm when all of these things came in together in a rather overwhelming way, and I'm just being very authentic over here for myself, that I was super overwhelmed. So yeah.
Thank you for bringing the relatability there, Nishant. I don't think, as leaders, sometimes we have too much pressure of knowing it all. I don't think we know it all. We know our purpose, we know where we want to go, but do we always know the way to know? Not really. But one thing that you touched upon about the opportunities that grew, and there was so many positives as well that came out of this. And your relationship with your people that you're leading in general really went through a huge change. Roma, of course, you lead a very, very young organization. You've been pretty much the founding members of setting that culture up in Zepto. How has your relationship changed in the last couple of years, and how have you seen this transition?
See, honestly, during the pandemic, I was a part of two organizations. One was selling water when people were not stepping out. The other was Zepto, which practically was born during that time when two youngsters could not find the right groceries. While we keep looking at the negative aspect and the painful aspect of the pandemic, the reality is, as you rightly mentioned, it was a treasure trove of opportunities. The first organization practically grew by 200% during the same time, the second one by 400%. And I think the reality is that we all have been pushed to think differently during that time. We all were pushed to think in a very different way during that time. And while we all were very focused about the great resignation of talent, the reality is they were going somewhere. Where were they going, right? They were going to an area where there were no stifling conventions that were holding them back. And I think that is something Yogi Sriram also touched upon yesterday, is that as workplaces, are we ready for the new talent profile? This is a talent profile, sorry to sound filmy, which has been fed on, ja simran ja, ji le apni zindagi. To zindagi na milegi dobara, to apna time aayega. And we tell them, you have to wait for 18 months to go to next level. Or this idea sounds good, but maybe next time. In a situation wherein they are seeing so many endings around them, they're not going to wait for you to change your mindset, for us to change our mindset, our rules, right? So I think what's worked, and I'll come back to what's worked for us at Zepto, is the fact that we've understood that it's the talent that is driving the organization. So, there was a time when the talent was at the mercy of the organization. That time doesn't exist today. So it's a very clear perspective to say that talent is the one that's driving the organization, and our job is to enable them at times and just move out of the way. The second piece is, we keep talking about the war of talent, but there's always a red ocean strategy and a blue ocean strategy. There are orgs like Cred, Misho, who have an ENPS of 96, which is crazy. What is making them tick? So they are not playing the talent war game. They are practically elevating themselves in such a manner as a talent brand, when talent very clearly knows that they are empowered to do what they think is right, as long as it's meeting their objectives and the org's objectives. How do we bring that clarity? So I think for us at Zepto, we specifically focused on getting the right talent and then just empowering them completely, moving out of the way. The question is a lot more about, again, it sounds very cliched, that leadership as a service mindset, but the idea is a lot of us who even were a part of the initial team at Zepto, when we started, we didn't know how big it could become. And the people we brought on board are the ones who know how to drive it. So our only contribution in the process is tell me what you need. And I think that's the mindset which worked for us.
Yeah, and I think it's knowing the vision, communicating, aligning them, which has kind of worked with you. And I'm going to bring in Zeeshan, obviously, another young organization, and I know Zeeshan has done some amazing work transforming the culture, bringing in new initiatives. How has that journey been for you, Zeeshan, and how has collaboration and communicating been center to that?
Hey, thank you, Swati. So, good morning all. So, just taking a step back, Swati, on the pre-pandemic phase, and we were discussing this before this panel discussion. Pre-pandemic, when an employee walked up to a manager asking for a work-from-home request, what would happen? It was almost like a sin, right? Or applying for a leave, or managers would tell that this is not being, you're not being productive and things like that. But now look how times have changed. It's become the new normal kind of a thing. I think managers have naturally become more empathetic because they face the same situation back home when they have to deal with their family, and family expects a lot from them kind of a thing. So I think empathy is the key, and that's been one of the learnings for me in this phase during the change. Managers and leaders being very empathetic. As an organization, we being more people-centric and driven towards kind of a common objective, right? The second part that I want to also talk about is, I think employers are more focusing on transparent communication, and at the same time, how do we probably include family members in most of our engagement interventions, right? So most of the benefits that you see today, or most of the policies that you see today, include family members, and this need not be your immediate family members. That this could be owning a pet also. Like most of our benefits or policies that Swati mentioned have been game changers in the last few months, is the concept of pet insurance, the concept of reimbursing for pet benefits, the concept of reimbursing for OTT and things like that. These subtle things that don't have a huge business impact, but also gives a feel that, look, truly we care for you as employees per se. So I think the new forms of communication and collaborative tools have really helped us reach out to employees. But at the same time, where we look at it is clearly including family members as an integral part, because they are an important decision makers in the life of an employee.
Absolutely. I think, there was a time when we used to say that we try to find time for life outside of work. The discussion definitely has shifted to trying to find work within life. Because as Pallab opened this, this conversation, life and where we belong, the family, the people, has become the center of everything. And the work has to find some connection to that. It cannot be two completely different parts of lives which don't talk to each other. So that's been probably one of the largest changes that has happened to this transition. But another transition, and probably another enabler to this transition, has been that people don't meet each other every day. I think the paradigms of what it means of workplace, what a work week look like, have changed. So technology has been at the center of redefining this new future-ready workplaces. Pallab, I think I'm going to begin with you. How has the transition been for you, and how has technology been an enabler for that?
Yeah, so as I said, how we work has undergone a tremendous change. So the technology, probably without technology, we couldn't have survive the pandemic. Let's just simply accept that. So we obviously people were working from home. Banking is an essential service. At least for 5 weeks. 5 weeks we worked from home. Then we were told to come back to office, and then we were doing rotation for some time before full time. We are back at office today. So that's how we are at banks. So, so when this people were working from home, how do you ensure customer data privacy, for example? How do you ensure that, and you're aware that these are regulated stuff, right? So you cannot really have any breaches on that. So those were stuff where technology definitely helped us with. The part about Zoom subscription going up, Teams, Slack, everything subscription going up is probably just an outcome of that entire piece. The second piece, how technology helps is the speed of communication, right? That I need to kind of tell you something today, and I need to tell across 18,000 odd employees that is waiting to hear from HR as are we open tomorrow? Not open tomorrow? Okay, if a crisis happens, where is my next hospital bed? Where do I get the black fungus injection? So those are things that they're expecting to know, and you need to kind of also propagate those success stories very quickly, because A needs, B needs, C needs, and you have only so much that you can do. So the speed of communication is definitely one part. The second important part is the candor, that came in with communication, right? So again, a typical example, I guess it's in public news now, that my MD has decided to pursue some other pursuits, some philanthropic pursuits, right? You're aware that such events need to be kind of published in BSc, NSC, etc., etc. So what we did was that the day the announcement happens, and the very next day morning we picked up calls with everybody. It was a conversational call. It was not a one-way call. It was not a one-way call. It was a conversation call where the CEO spoke with 18,000 employees in groups. Obviously, we couldn't manage 18,000 at one go, but group after group, to tell what his story is and he's a founder CEO, so you can understand the emotional connect people have with him. So that's the second part of the story. The third part of the story, I think, is breaking down the language barrier. I think someone talked earlier also about English being a binding language. For us, the people we take sometimes might not know English. That's the truth. And for all my service providers, the question that I ask is that because we are headquartered in Chennai, so can you translate this in Tamil for me? Okay, so that's what we are asking for. And today we have softwares which do real-time translation of communication, which reaches employees. So those are, I think, three key changes that technology has helped us with.
Absolutely, and I think the way you've reimagined customer experience and internal communication with technology has just been fantastic, and probably the need of the hour, considering the amount of lives that an industry like yours touches, right?
Absolutely.
I'm just going to bring in Zeeshan. Zeeshan, again, organization which is probably, very digital first, so one would think that technology is a much easier transformation. So how has been the technology and the relationship for you?
Sure. So I think for us, from a technology standpoint, you can't do away with it. For example, for people who are working remote, right, you can miss a meal per day, you'll not feel guilty about it. But if Google Meet, Zoom or Slack doesn't work, then you're all over the place. So that's the role the technology has actually played. But I'll break this into two. One is for people who are working remote, and second, people who prefer hybrid or physical office space, right? For people who are working remote, true form of engagement is closing their laptop and getting some time off from the laptop screen, which essentially means that if you want to have regular one-to-ones with employees, right, HR business partners having regular one-to-one with employees, I don't think a Zoom or a Google Meet conversation of half an hour, 15 minutes would probably do because you're exposing them too much. So we've seen more and more AI-based platforms reaching out to employees to get their pulse than having these regular one-to-ones and things like that. So likes of Amber by Infido or Lena AI, etc., gives you quick pulse on ENPS, gives you quick pulse on how an employee is feeling than you wanting to spend more screen time, etc. It just takes 2 or 3 minutes for them to kind of fill. The second part is, I think from a physical workplace perspective, Slack, Nishant and I were discussing about it, Slack has played a very integral part than these long mail exchanges, getting real-time feedback. I think the presentation on Slack yesterday also touched upon this part. What we've done is we've created different hobby groups, mutual interest groups, etc., through which just people connect and feel engaged, and they don't have to go through the monotony of regular meetings and so on and so forth. I think that two primary roles that communication has played in our organization in a big way would be Amber one, which is your hearing, listening. They call themselves a chief listening officer, and second Slack, because these both have integrated really well in the organization that we work.
And I can speak on Zeeshan's behalf. Swati did not pay us to bring Slack in.
Thank you. That was my next line. That was not a plug-in by Slack, but always great. And I think that's something that keeps us going, is to hear great customer stories and the value that collaboration brings in. So I think one of the topics, and of course the third topic on the panel, on the discussion, is productivity. One of the challenges that organizations have faced is the proximity bias, right? Even as leaders, we've been so used to having our teams around, knowing what they're spending time on, knowing that, I mean, not necessarily micromanage, but knowing that you are kind of able to set the tone for the day, what they're spending time on, and kind of keeping them closely bond as a team. I think that, and I think one of the biggest fears was, is my team still going to be productive when we go all digital? And that's a huge fear, because that's going to drive your business results and the KPIs that you stand for. And you know, one of the first businesses that came to mind, Roma, was yours, because I think you basically thrive on operational excellence and kind of having a productive setup within the organization. So do you feel that this is, you know, something that's a roadblock, that's kind of difficult to get to?
See, honestly, I think productivity is a word which was used a lot and measured very less. I'll be very upfront, right? We keep talking about it, but for us, and maybe if I have to be a bit broader around it, overall, I think when we talk about such criteria, we have to be very clear what we are optimizing for. You know, like, so what does productivity mean for us? Is it just an ENPS score or a percentage wage bill to revenue? Is that productivity for us? So we have to be very clear about what we are optimizing for. And you know, something that I love in marketing, you know, which are supposed to be the pallbearers of growth and revenue for the org, is they always talk about customer acquisition, customer retention, and customer monetization. In HR, we are very good at talking about employee acquisition, employee retention. But I don't think we put in a lot of thought on how do we measure employee monetization. Eventually, it's about money. Eventually, it's about cost. So eventually, it's about, when we talk about valuation of an organization, right, it's also about employees bringing in that value. So apart from, you know, the metrics that we normally use, which many of times they're not direct metrics or they are input metrics, how do we push that conversation to outcome metrics? Like average employee value. Can we define that? How much has the market value of an employee grown in the time that they've been with us? And we do that. We do that when we do compensation benchmarking. But we showcase it as saying, you know, our talent today is moved from P50 to P66. Can we talk about employee journeys in terms of average employee value, in terms of gross profit per employee? I think the moment we are very clear as an organization what we are optimizing for when we talk about productivity, I think that's our first step taken. Like for us, we are very clear it is average employee value. For every employee that I have, how is their value growing up in market? So we don't believe in like a yearly or a biannual surveys of how my you know, compensation ranges are going. We actually have it quarter to quarter. Top talent, how is it growing? You know, the value that they are adding, you know, even if it's an expensive talent, if the person is adding like a 1.2 crore talent is adding 2 crore value per month, it still makes sense for us. So how do we talk numbers? For us, I think that's helped a lot. Second is, there are teams in which we don't talk about productivity. We don't talk about productivity crisis in, let's say, in sales Or we don't talk about it in IT services which are billed by man hours. Why? Because their targets are very clear. You know, their incentives are very clear. They're getting monthly, quarterly rewards. So reward delayed is reward denied. You know, today we have broad goals for many teams. There is not a clear line of sight on what's in it for me, for that employee. And hence, then talking about productivity, what's in it for them? I mean, why will they be productive? But if we are bold enough to take an innovative approach upon reward, saying that, okay, 100 to 120% is basis your performance management system, but if you reach that crazy value, you know, you have a project linked bonus, and we do that in IT. We do that, but we don't do that, you know, as a general rule. We've been actually utilizing that a lot more at Zepto. I'm not sure if the system working. Okay, better? So I think that's worked for us. So once you clarify what you're optimizing from an organizational perspective, once you clarify what you're optimizing from an employee perspective, then it's all about having common goals with them. So, you know, you drive the same goal in product, same goal in last mile, and same goal in HR. So, for example, if store profitability is something critical, the apps which ensure store profitability in tech have the same value as, you know, the dark store manager who has to ensure operationalization there, as well as HR who has to ensure that you have feet on street at that point of time. And that is where collaboration becomes important. That is where conversations become important. So once you've created that line of sight for the org and the employee, and you created opportunities for them to collaborate and come together to drive that, then it's all about, you know, them running the race themselves.
I think in sales we say that if you can't measure something, you can't control it, right? So I think your sense of not having control over productivity comes when you've not even actually measured it as an organization. And that's a very, very strong point there, Roma. Nishant, I know you run operations which are probably cannot go wrong. Like, we need our matches and movies on time. So what does productivity mean to you in the new world?
All right. Yeah. Yes. I mean, we take care of the country's entertainment needs. I'll bring a bit of a different angle to it, if you allow me. So think about it. The day lockdown got announced, we were a few weeks away, only a few weeks away from the largest sporting event in the country, perhaps one of the largest sporting events in the world. And poof, it just happened like this. Next day onwards, nobody could come over to the office. And I'm just going to take, I think one of our panelists said, trust. I don't think we had an option but not to trust. So while it's, you know, a lot of times say that, oh yeah, I mean, we're cultivating trust, all of that is fantastic, okay? But when push comes to shove, when you have no other option, this is what this pandemic did for, I guess, everybody. You don't have a choice, you just have to trust. So overnight, all right, so I would give it that because we are a technology company, we already had several mechanisms and also largely the mindset to very quickly be able to pivot. And again, you haven't paid me to bring this insert. We already were on Slack. Our Slack journey was already about 4 years, or, you know, more than that old. 4 years, I think, three and a half, 4 years. There were already groups, channels, etc., that we were using them for. But suddenly, you had a scenario where you were in each other's face in a good way, and solving issues, strategizing, the customer experience, all of that. And now next day, you had to use your tools, productivity tools, in ways that you had never used them. And well, the event also got postponed by a little bit. It helped us, that we were better prepared. But all of the work, all of the background work, so when you see an event or a movie or anything on your phone, there is like big technology that's running in the background. And all of that was just, so from a productivity perspective, what were we optimizing for? No, we were not optimizing for managerial comfort. That, okay, I need to see you so that I feel comfortable. No, not at all. We were optimizing for end consumer. If we are able to be on track with every single deliverable, every single, the technology aspect that we have to take care of. We were fine with that. As a matter of fact, these became opportunities for us. So people couldn't go to the stadium, right, to watch these matches. So we said one of the biggest insights that we got was that people love it when they hear the ambient noises in the stadium, fans cheering. All right, so that's not going to be possible. What do? Do we start a laugh track? Of course, we did something equivalent of that. So when you were watching it, you actually could hear fan voices, of course they were doctored, fan voices in the background, ambient sounds, which continued to create the sort of experience that consumers demand of us. So I just wanted to kind of bring that angle and hopefully paint a picture of a large event that most of us love, that optimization, I think you mentioned that, and trust. We were optimizing for trust and consumer experience and not for the comfort that, oh, I need to see my team member in front of me, bahut kaam karta hai. So yeah, that's...
Sure. If I may just add, if I may just add to what Nishant mentioned, the concept of the importance of trust, right? And plus one to what he said. I think a lot of us have a very wrong notion that productivity is equivalent to coming to office. Right, and we're all so used to following the wave. The wave was work from home, so most of them said, let's work from home. Now they see people coming back to office, so they said, let's bring them back to office. And then you prepare a case study on why it's important, why productivity has increased, and so on and so forth. I feel that when you're working from home, when somebody's working from home and when they shut the laptop, there is a guilt that they're not able to contribute, or there's a guilt of taking a break. Whereas the same guilt doesn't exist when somebody's in office and takes a coffee break, kind of a thing, right? So they are more productive. Obviously, it's not a good way of being productive because it takes a toll on employees' health, etc., sitting for long hours. But I feel they're more productive or equally productive while they're working from home. So I just wanted to add that trust element because at the end of the day boils down to trust and asking your employees to do what they would love to do. Like I was talking to Roma also on this, right? The Zepto 10-minute delivery that you guys offer. There was an interesting meme on LinkedIn which said, look at software engineers traveling for 2 hours to build a product that delivers food in 10 minutes. Right, so.
Thanks firstly, Zishan, thanks for kind of visualizing that sporting event. I think all of us love great sporting stories, and when it is cricket, I think we absolutely love that. So thanks for painting that for us. And as Zishan said, absolutely, trust is being critical. That's what kind of brought us to this new era. That's what makes our employees feel trusted, valued, because they feel that the leadership trusts them. I know we are kind of almost, we are at time, but I'm just going to kind of, if there is any audience questions, I'm just going to take a break, take a small break for that before we wrap up. Any audience questions on what has been spoken about, anything that has resonated with you, even if it's not a question, would love to hear that.
Yeah, hi, this is Manish. I have a question for Roma. So interesting thoughts. I'm assuming I'm audible, but I've brought two, I think, doubts in my head, and I thought I'll take your view. One, similar goals to that of business. It's a fine balance, especially from an HR perspective, to create what business needs and what people would need. Yes, it drives alignment, but it may just also miss the kind of right conflict one needs to have. I'll take an example. Suppose a business growth number. A leader may be driving growth ahead of the curve, and hence there may be a broad car crash that you may feel as a HR business partner. In a scenario like this, those conflicts go away. That's probably my first question to you. On similar goals. Let me complete both and then over to you. It will help us save time. Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
And this, the second point that you made around enablement, get out of the way of people. I think there, at least my own learning, right? In a high-paced startup environment, jobs evolve faster, right? But people capability, especially when they need to move up the curve, takes time. And yes, when to stop is also a big job that one needs to do. Because ultimately you work in a setup where there are frictions, there are people who watch each other. And hence, at some point in time, parity development comes into play. So I don't know how are we solving for it. Both were different thoughts. I thought maybe I'll take a view.
So let me answer the first question, which is about basically how do you maintain your pace when you are driving in a high-speed lane, right? That's practically the question, yeah? Have I understood it right? So that, people don't feel, there is no car crash practically that's happened. So how do you maintain safety of the automobile in a high-speed lane? That's practically the question. I think somewhere we tend to think about extremes a lot more than about majority of where our folks are, out of so many vehicles which are driven, the percentage of car crash is still low. And again, see, the question is, what are you optimizing for? Do we build our models purely around ensuring that there are no car crashes? That's also an objective we can have. Or do we build our models to ensure that there are very clear safety guardrails wherein the possibility of that happening is very low? Yeah? Today, no industry is crash-free. And hence, again, as an organization today, I optimize a lot more. And I know where you're coming from, that there's a high employee burn rate if there is too much stress on the ground and there are people who are stretching. But as an org, you'll optimize on ensuring that majority of your folks don't fall into that. And wherever you can see, and that's where the human angle comes in, that wherever you can see that happening, you quickly catch it before it becomes an issue, right? So to just go back to it, in any high-speed growth organization or any high-risk, high-speed spot, there's always a reality wherein crashes will happen, right? And again, the point is, how do you build a culture of that high level of safety and trust wherein that point is minimized, and wherever you see that happening before, you catch it before it becomes something which is internal to the organization. So what creates a bigger risk is when you are okay with crashes happening, you're okay with employee burnout, you're like, that's a cost to pay for growth. I think as long as you are very clear, and once you do that, see, even your good talent is not going to work with you. If they feel that you are dispensable, you're treating them as dispensable assets, ki, theek hai, aaj ye burn ho gaya. It's like changing the tire that burns out fast, right? Ki, theek hai, today it's not you, tomorrow it'll be somebody else. That is an approach which is going to anyway impact even the amazing talent which is not burning out in the organization. But the question is, how do you optimize for ensuring there are very strong guardrails on safety, trust, and empathy, and for those who do break down, and who will break down even if it's not high speed. Even in normal speed organizations, industries, that is still a reality, right? You ensure that you catch it before, so there are preventive measures and there are corrective measures to take care of it. Your second question was, how do you, basically for folks who don't scale up, how do you ensure that you manage the growth? Is that, have I understood it correctly?
So
okay.
Roma is a friend, so I was thinking of taking it offline because Manish brought it up. I think the broader thought I have, I think philosophically it's hard to disagree, right? I think what I'm more talking about is there are reversible and irreversible decisions. Your business grew 10x. If you increase salary, your business can go down. You can't reduce salary by 10x. So I think the execution challenge of knowing is what is a climate change versus a culture change, because climate will change every 6 months, and culture building is a lot more foundational, hence far more tougher, right? And it's difficult to not resist to the urge of the crowd. And you and me have spoken long about instant gratification and delayed gratification, and that mix, I love the thought, and I think we have still not spoken enough. I think I like the idea of marrying it. I still don't know on an execution level, at scale, how will it work?
See, and I think that's a good problem to have. The point is, and see, what I'm very happy about is that we are talking about those uncomfortable questions. We are talking about things that, okay, this will not happen. But again, if I flip it and say, if we have to make it happen in a way that is sustainable, how do we make it happen? So again, I'm again going to push all of us to say, before we come up to say, okay, this is something which is not possible, or this is something which can lead to a car crash, or this is something which is not sustainable, and there are challenges, which is a great thought to have. But if we flip the question, and I'm saying that because today I'm reporting to two 19-year-olds who only ask me one question, tell me, Roma, why is it not possible? And I believe that mindset shift to say, okay, if we have to make it happen in a way that is safe, sustainable, how do I make it happen? Just changing the question, on how to manage this problem is something that will just make all of us, and I'm not just referring to this group, but I think as an industry, all of us think about solutions which are far way beyond than the barriers we build for our own selves at times. Like 10-minute delivery for the longest time was something which was a stuff of dreams, right? But it's happening. Our average time when we started off was 8 minutes, not even 10 minutes, right? So the question is, how do you make it happen? How do we, so I might actually come back to say, you're right. It's not scalable today. You're right. It will cause car crash. How do I make it happen? The question is, how do we make it happen? Because it's possible. And that's the beauty of the new talent coming on board. That's the talent, that Yogi Sriram talked about. Are we ready for that talent? Are we ready for that innovative thought? Are we bold enough to say, is it possible? No. How do I make it happen? Yeah. I know philosophically it sounds well. We have to make it happen. No. See, the question is, even if we don't make it happen, somebody else will.
No, Roma. There is nothing more practical than a good theory.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's beautiful when good theory is substituted with great examples.
I think your conversation and whatever we've been talking about, one theme that I am seeing is that there may be a different approach to a lot of things. There may be a different solutions that we've taken across the board on facing the challenge that you're facing. But what's consistent is that you need to know your basics. What is your purpose exactly, right? Is it innovation? Is it employee excellence? Is it dreaming big, like you said, right? As long as I think that central theme, this is never going to be the last, this is not the last crisis that we faced as organizations, as leaders, and we're going to continue to come across. But what should stay solid and at the center is the purpose we are driving for. And I think that's a very, very big takeaway for me. And Nishant, before we close, I would love to hear your last takeaway from the discussion and from the crisis in general. What has been your biggest takeaway?
Okay. So I have a fundamental belief, and this takeaway is a part of that belief, that as people, as employees, for a very long time, maybe the workforce of today has wanted very similar things for a very long time. We would have kind of gotten to where we are maybe after years and years. This pandemic, this situation that we are in, has accelerated, and hugely so. So whether it is, we all want fairness, equity, sustainable careers in life, and that has not changed. I think for what has changed, and very rapidly so, is people want flexibility. People want to be able to, how long have we talked about work-life integration? I don't even care to remember the number of years that we've thought about it. But today presents truly a huge opportunity for the first time in so many years that we can absolutely do something for work-life integration. And I think this remote work, hybrid work, being able to balance my home and my personal life as well as my work life and deliverables, etc. To me, the biggest takeaway comes from that I want to be able to put myself in the thick of it and say, can I influence organization thinking? Can I influence the policies that come out of that thinking to build flexibility as an anchor point and truly have a great shot at making sure that there is actual work-life integration and sustainability and equity and fairness, etc. So that's been my biggest takeaway, Swati, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, thank you. And I think that almost kind of links back to our feeling when, I think at Slack we say something like, it's a technology for the moment which was built before the moment. It's almost a pinch me kind of a feeling to say that something that was created 13 years back and is actually finding so much relevance in the current scenario. Did somebody almost foresee it? So like I said, it's knowing what is right and what's going to come. but it's really having your anchors right. And thanks for summarizing that, Nishant. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for being a lovely audience and engaging. Thank you so much.